Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. So today we are under my 2020 Explorer ST. We're going to do something that I haven't seen online. Nobody sells it specifically for this, but because the 10R80 and 10R60 share the same case, everything interchanges. You're looking at the factory plastic transpan, and what we are going to do today is take that off. And we are going to swap over to the PPE cast aluminum deep pan. I got it in satin black, matte black, whatever color that's supposed to be. Adds a couple quarts. The kit I got on eBay from Max Flow Products or Max Flow Racing. Comes with 9 quarts of fluid, comes with a filter, which if you have ever bought this trans service kit from them, the first thing you notice, the filter says 10R80, the gasket says 10R80. That's normal. Don't be afraid of that. I did actually order one for a 10R60 Bronco, but it's the same part number between the 10R80, 10R60, all of them. So we're gonna get this thing on there and make a mess getting the ATF out, I'm sure, but it has 32,000 miles, so it's time to do some servicing. One thing that I did notice, going back to the truck real quick, is that compared to like an F-150, I haven't been under a Bronco, so I don't know what's in the way and what's not. This has the exhaust completely out of the way. Some of the transcooler tabs and shift stuff, get it in the picture. It has little tabs in there that you're gonna have to pop out with a clip puller. But for the most part, there's actually more room here, and I'm gonna see if I can do it without having to loosen the rear motor mount or rear trans mount and jack it up like the F-150 guys have to. Anyway, I'll update you here a couple minutes as we move along. So some tools that you're going to need are going to be a 10 mil, a 13, probably half, but if you have a snap-on, it's the same deal, and an 8 mil. You have 10 mils right here on these studs that are the half for the heat shield stuff. I've already removed that from the last time when we did a service. Just didn't bother to put them back on. And then I had this side next to the drive line. So you take those off, and then you have 8s and 13s. Just keep in mind, try to keep in mind where they go. What I usually do is get a piece of cardboard, jam them into the cardboard or lay them on the cardboard, make myself a little map. I'm going to do that, and then we'll come back. So this is what I was talking about. I just write down the size of the nut. Keep in mind the 13s are going to be where your 10 mil heat shield nuts go on. Those are the ones that have the studs. So it's pretty easy, it's symmetrical, not overly complicated. Obviously, if you're watching this, you can always freeze frame, draw this diagram real quick, look at your own, do the same. But pretty basic stuff, just helps you remember where everything needs to go so you're not flopping them all around when you're trying to put it back together. One other tool you'll want is some sort of a big drain pan. We have an industrial oil catcher one with the plastic there to grab as much of the fluid. I suggest pre-draining it if you have a way to vacuum suck it out. A little vacula. The fill port is up on top there. You can't really see it too easily. Kind of difficult to get to if you don't know it's there. But you will need a pump to put the fluid back in. A lot of that stuff you can get AutoZone, Napa, wherever. Not terribly complicated on that side. The new drain pan does have a plug, so when you go to do fluid services in the future, if you're just changing the fluid, it'll be way easier, just like doing your oil. So I intentionally did this the wrong way in case you don't have a 4-post lift, you don't have some way to vacuum suck the oil back out. If you undo all the bolts except the last 4 corners, you can slowly release the back and it will drain. So it's the wrong way to do it, but it will work. So the pan is off. The next thing will be to pull the filter assembly off, which is just 2 bolts, and I believe those are 10 mils, and then put the new filter on, use the new gasket and pan, and use factory torque specs. I know that in watching the F-150 video, They said that PPE wanted 18 foot-pounds. Factory is 8 to 9. In fact, it's low enough that they do it in inch-pounds. It was 96 to 106 inch-pounds of torque. It's also a plastic pan, which that would make sense, but these bolts are really small. So, get it into focus there. I don't have the biggest hands, but still, they look pretty tiny. I think I'm probably only going to go about 10 foot-pounds when I tighten this all back down. If you want, you could put some sealant on it. I use Ultra Gray. If you can get it, there's some other Permabond products that we call GTR glue. It's what Nissan uses for the front covers on their engines. Works really, really good. The way the gasket looks, I don't think that's going to be necessary. And the one that came off looking pretty good. So I'm going to just go with 8 to 9 foot-pounds, maybe 10, and call it a day. So one thing that is interesting is Ford put magnets in this pan, and 2 of them, you know, see a little bit of gunk on it, not bad for 32,000 miles. And when you switch over to this one, oh, it doesn't have them, but have no fear. It does have a magnetic drain plug. So it'll get some material, maybe not as much as those 2 magnets would, but we're not getting left in the dark here without a magnet of some sort. So way to go, PPE. So in these kits, the filter that you get is apparently 10R80 specific. You'll see here, number 1, that's a nice clean white filter. And then this is just a hole, nothing special. Now when we flip over to the one I just pulled off, you can see it's pretty grimy in there for 32,000 miles. And at first I was freaking out because it wasn't going to fit. So there is an adapter ring that slides on the front for the filter where it goes back in. We'll call that a gasket, I guess. At any rate, you have to swap that from filter to filter. So don't panic thinking that maybe you got the wrong part. It does look different, but once you swap that, everything goes back in like normal. And the bolts were actually 8 mil. You have one really long one on the right side of the car, and the left side of the car is the short one. So for those people that maybe have problems with that, the long one goes on the passenger side, the driver's side gets the short. And just to show you where that little adapter collar goes in, right where it feeds into the, I would assume, pump assembly. It just goes right on, goes right back in. You can completely reuse it. Pretty easy. One other thing I forgot to mention, and maybe you've already watched an F-150 install video, but just so that you're clear, this is to the front. This is a front sump style pan. So it's easy to tell though. You have a little bit of an edge here that's not full rectangle. They knocked the corner off. If you ever have any questions doing anything, piece of advice that I can give you that I was given, take pictures every chance you get when you're taking stuff apart. Always lay it oriented how you took it off, because it just gives you a road map. And you can look there, the old pan, that's exactly what I did. And you can see the one corner is back towards the right rear, which obviously the new pan is flipped around right now, but you can see that the sump is going to be in the front if that is in the back. So just a piece of advice that works for a lot of stuff. Wiring, anytime you're doing mechanical stuff for the first time on something you haven't worked on before. Anyway, thought that might be a good thing to include. So because I intend to do lots of drag racing and high power, I did get the deep pan. You can see that it sits a little bit lower. This is looking from the passenger side in. You also can see where it has an 1/8 inch MPT if you wanted to add a temp probe for an external gauge. Obviously we can monitor it on the dash, but if you wanted an actual gauge for towing or whatever you wanted to do, you can still do that. There is the option for the shallower pan. So if you were worried about ground clearance, you can swap to that, but just kind of keeping this walking relative to the rear cross member I think we're probably only about an inch lower, maybe a half inch. It's not really that much, but it is some. So if you're ultra low, have really bad roads, live off-road, something that you're going to want to think about. Maybe not necessarily going to the deep pan. I said earlier 10 foot-pounds, not doing the math in my head correctly. That would be 120 inch-pounds. So what I did is I did the 96 inch-pounds, which would be 8 foot-pounds. On the 8mm headed bolts, the ones with studs that are 13s, I did the factory 106. You can pretty much come up with any torque pattern you want. It's so loose it won't matter. You can just go on down the line, side to side. I'm sure there's going to be people that argue about it, but whatever. Anyway, not 10 foot-pounds. Do 96 and 106. Okay. So that is the factory fill plug. It is a 19mm. It does have a dipstick on the end to help you understand how much you actually have in there, because this is the first time for me using this pan. I know that I drained a significant portion out. According to the spec, it's 7 quarts, I believe, on a pan change. So I'm going to start with 4 quarts. So for that operation, obviously, I loosened that up. You might have something similar. We do a lot of transmission filling around here, both standard gear oil and ETF. So it's just a gallon jug with a hand pump and a length of silicone tube. Obviously, it has a little bit of some type of ATF in it. We're going to be using Mercon ULV, which is the specific stuff for the 10R60, 10R80. I think you can get it anywhere, Walmart, Amazon, probably a Ford dealership. So I'm going to make sure that line is clean, since I don't know what was in it last. I did clean the bottle already, so might have to redo that again. Fill that thing with a gallon, put that in there, check the dipstick, repeat till it's full. And from here on out, it's just a matter of checking the level, starting it, letting it circulate through everything, check it again, make sure that you're not going to run it dry, because it's an expensive part to break. Anyway, guys, I hope you find this video helpful. I want to dedicate it to the loving memory of Richard from the Ford Explorer High Performance Group. You know, too soon. Okay, so the last step is checking for leaks. One thing to note, your heat shields will not fit. And getting around this right here, you kind of have to go in at an angle and up. That was the only part that I don't think I actually was able to show, since I filmed this by myself. You got these big, huge heat sinks, which is part of the ground clearance thing, but they're there because we need them. And then always be careful. Don't trust anybody to have ever done it right. Check your drain plug before you put fluid in it, of course. I did that off camera, but again, details that need to be explained sometimes, because, you know, we don't know who checked these things, so we got to do it for ourselves. I think that sums it up. If you have questions, please leave them in the comments below. I'm gonna try to get links to everybody that helped on this project. Obviously PPE, Max Flow Motorsport, English Racing, a couple of the ones that easily come to mind. Okay guys, take care.